Hello, everyone, and welcome to MyCHN podcast, Health Conversations Without Barriers. This is Mariela and the CHN gang.
Hi, all. I'm Olga.
Hi, I'm Elijah.
And this is the second part to the first part of The Pharmacist. So just a quick recap for episode 1 and 2. We find out the horrible tragedy, Mr. Dan and his family, he's the pharmacist, that they go through, but this is the catalyst to him becoming a spokesperson against the opioid abuse that is going on in his town, and for him to stop a doctor, Dr. Jacqueline Claggett, from operating and prescribing in that town. So now we start with episode 3. And this one is dope dealers with white lab coats, which, I mean, for me, actually, that's a pretty good title for the episode. So we see the conflict between Mr. Dan and Ravi, right? How they're having a conflict between how the FBI and the DEA are taking this case, and they feel like both of these two entities are not doing anything to stop Dr. Jacqueline Claggett. And what do you guys think they were feeling at the moment?
So I definitely think that Mr. Dan was so determined. He was willing to do anything to go beyond, even though FDA wasn't even letting him participate in any investigation. They were pretty much laughing at him. So now he becomes even more determined to do anything he can to stop this.
I thought this part was so interesting because here they are, he's waiting on them and they're looking at him like, who are you? You're not even, like, you're nobody. And he getting more done than what the DEA is able to get done in that time frame. And I think it's interesting because they were like, well, we had to wait for all of these bureaucratic kind of processes, and that was taking them so long, but he was able to get much more done faster than they could, and they weren't even taking it seriously.
Yes, they were going through a level, right, of like bring it up. But Mr. Dan was like, why are you guys going through all that? Let's just do something about it. We see a DEA agent. She talks about that there was no such thing as a prescription monitoring program. Do you guys know what that was?
Where they were able to see who's prescribing what to which patient and how much. And at that time, they did not have that program.
That's kind of crazy because imagine having just like stacks of paper. Who's going to have the time to go through stacks of paper and then, I guess, put them in Excel spreadsheets? I don't know. That just sounds like a lot of manual work. And then we see that they give us a number for how many prescription drug, Oxycontin, Dr. Claggett prescribed. She wrote 180,000 prescriptions.
Oh, wow. That's a large number.
That's a lot. And they kind of rounded down because actually she wrote 182,723. And it was all because, you know, it was like a very small town, right? Not like a small town, but think of it as like suburban, I guess, but in the bad side of suburban. And there was only 10 pharmacies. So, dear listener, we live in Texas. And unless you're in Midtown or downtown Houston, and if you're in a suburban or rural area, there is probably, three pharmacists, not three pharmacists, I'm so sorry, 3 pharmacies, or at most, I would say 6, but you have to kind of like drive around. And if this was the case for San Bernard Parish, then that means in a small area, she was prescribing all these prescriptions. So that's just blew my mind. So, and then also we see like the videos of the death in young people, right? And then it's just because of overdose. So apparently this little community was ground zero for overdoses.
Seeing all the kids dying back and forth, not back and forth, but over and over again. And I can only imagine how Dan would have felt seeing that happen in his community after what happened to his son. And then his daughter, she was talking about how a lot of her friends had overdosed throughout her teenage years and her early adulthood. She's mentioned like some sound they make when they're gasping for air when they're going through. And she's like, yeah, I had to sit there through like a couple of friends. I saw that happen a couple of times. I was like, wow.
I can't imagine, because at that point you already know that their dependence of this drug is literally maybe something that they're doing every day at that point.
Yeah, so definitely that's a scary part. But the other point that scared me a lot is that when one of the sales the one of the salespeople for Purdue Pharma, he was interviewed in the show, and he said, so I knew that there was something wrong with these drugs, but I was keep going because of money. So that was a very crazy point for me, because pretty much all these people, they were going in for money. And he said, um, if anybody else would be there, they would do the same thing in my position, because they were getting paid so much to promote this drug. They couldn't stop, even though they knew they probably have a part of, some people's deaths, some kids' deaths.
So they had another addiction, the sales rep.
To the money, and that's probably a bigger one.
I believe I wrote it down. His name is Chris Davis. There you go. And he was a sales rep with Purdue Pharma, and he started in 1998. And he just says that, the training, the orientation was, he said it was like a lot of rah, which I'm pretty sure that just means like it was very like positive, like you can do this. And all these things were like, it was very intensive. Apparently it was like a long period. But you also see the reason at the beginning, this sales rep just thought, hey, we're just selling a medication that has been approved by the FDA. So they pretty much use that label of FDA approved to get in the hospitals and get to talk to the doctors, right? So it's kind of like, and he says, hey, all the work that it takes to even get this approval, like, and it's true. It takes a lot of work.
Yes, and I remember him saying he was trying to work in the area, and then I know he noticed Dr. Claggett and how many she was prescribing. So now he says, well, I just need the right doctor. I don't need the area. I just need the right doctor who's going to make me a lot of money. So that's why when he figures out that, Dr. Claggett has, a part of this, and she's pretty much running a pill mill at this point.
I know when he was talking about, wait a minute, this is, and I wrote it, dear listener, I wrote it. And he says that the sub rep was making almost 180,000 a year.
I think it was like $800,000 a year. 800
Yes.
something. Yeah, it was almost $1 million. Like I remember the money part. That was crazy. Insanity.
I mean, and it makes you think at that point, like, if you would be in that position, would you do the same? I mean, I want to think I wouldn't, but I mean, that's a big amount of money. I don't know.
You start seeing him realize when he went to Dr. Cleggett's operation, because before that he had gone to regular doctors' clinics, right? He calls it, and he says a low-hanging fruit. So in a way, they do get, like, they get all this data, right, of what doctors prescribing what. Like, are they doing short opioids? Are they prescribing Oxycontin? Like, at what level? How do we turn this low-hanging fruit into the big monsters, the big whales that they were kind of, the sales rep were using to kind of use for bragging rights? You guys heard that? Like, it's kind of like when you go hunting, I guess, and you catch like a big prey. That's kind of how they were using these terms to refer to the doctors using pill mills in a way. We go back now to reports of criminal behavior, right? You see all this report of literally there was a video of a guy robbing a pharmacist in a pharmacy, and he said, "Give me your Oxycontin." I'm not laughing because I think it's funny. I'm just laughing because I laugh when something is kind of makes me nervous in a way. When you tell me someone went to rob a pharmacy, okay, first of all, when you tell me someone went to rob a bank, I'm like, okay, well, they're there for the money. But if you tell me someone robbed a pharmacist,
Definitely that addiction is so strong that people are willing to go above and beyond just to get the drug. And it scares me. And it's crazy how the doctors are the ones who have this power, pretty much. They have power in their hands. And now they're abusing their power in their own benefit. So Dr. Claggett, she was making millions as well as all the people who had attached to this drug. They all made a lot of money, but the crazy part that they made money on somebody's death, pretty much. That's really scary.
So then you see a promo, right? Because this promo, this is marketing from Purdue Pharma, and it's called Partners Against Pain. You see testimonials from patients that suffer a chronic illness, right? That brings them pain. I did relate to I believe he was a construction guy, and he said that he had back pain. When I say that I suffer back pain, I could relate to him. So so I did a little bit of research, guys. And a lot of the people that are shown in those commercials have passed away from overdoses, have lost everything. Some of them were homeless. Some of them lost their families because they became addicted. For example, the grandma that, she said, I can finally play with my grandkids. When she lost her job, she lost her insurance, she could no longer get the pills, so she sold her car to get the pills. Then she sold her house, and at some point she was homeless. So this was honestly not a good ending for all of them. And then you see like this, obviously this is research that I've done now, but the marketing was so good back then that some doctors thought it was not addictive. I mean, or they were paid to say that it was not addictive.
Yeah, it's crazy. And even the president of the the Purdue Pharma company, he believed that he did not want to accept the fact that this drug was bad until the end. And that just shows how determined they were to make the money and sell the drug no matter what.
I think that just really goes to show how medical there's can be an impact on the community when it comes to certain ramifications. I could really tell there was like a disconnect between the people who were on the defense when they had when the corporate people in Purdue Pharma testified, Congress. There was a big disconnect. They showed all the impact that it had on the parish community. That community had been ravaged. I mean, people were going to the drugstore, robbing the drugstore for drugs rather than money because their addiction had driven them to that point. Like that community probably wasn't it wasn't Beverly Hills, but it wasn't like that. You know what I mean? So that's a big effect.
There was definitely a big effect. We also see what Chris Davis says that the salaries of the sales rep, right? They were coming from targets of opportunity, which are the low-hanging fruit, which is the doctors that they call monsters. So pretty much he's telling us that these pill mill doctors are paying the sales reps salaries. And that's why they're able to make that much, because it's coming from the doctors pretty much. And then we see, the the FBI agent, it's kind of, they're still getting those receipts, right? The director of this documentary, he's still playing those receipts of Mr. Dan. You see them still hearing all the recorded phone calls, but then she talks about the one time that she went to Dr. Klega's house. What did she find in Dr. Klega's house?
Yeah, so I remember the part she went to her house, and her house was looking very kind of all over the place. And she figured out that Dr. Claggett has kids, and she was very disoriented when she was asleep. Dr. Claggett was asleep when they came into the house, but she felt very disoriented. So then the FDA agent, she suspected that maybe Dr. Claggett is using the drugs herself. And then they came to her house to ask her to give away her license because of how much harm she's doing. And they asked her to voluntarily give away her license. And Dr. Claggett said, I have kids to pay, to put through school pretty much. So she refused. She refused to give away her license at that point.
That was actually, in a way, the way I saw that, the FBI agent was pretty much extending a hand to her, right? Because she knew what was coming. She pretty much tried to get her to get help and still be able to later on, once she gets help, go back and kind of rectify her actions in a way. So then she, as Olga said, she did not stop. Actually, she continued. Then we find the smoking gun, right? We find that this is the way that they're going to be able to stop her. How did they get the state board to pay attention to Dr. Cleggett's case and stop her from operating as a doctor?
Dan needed some evidence. Dan spoke to her. He asked her about he had found some evidence of how much she was prescribing. And he asked her, and he had recorded it. And he asked her, he's like, Dr. Claggett, did you fill his prescription? She was like, yeah, I did. And he's like, well, this is like way over the line. Like, this is way over what anybody would be recommended to be prescribed. She's like, yeah, well, who made you a doctor? She said it much more colorful than that, but that was pretty much the smoking gun for the evidence for him to be able to go ahead, Dan and the DA and everyone else to be able to go ahead and move forward with the case.
Yes, I believe it was all about the little girl, and she started her with 80 milligrams of oxycodone, which is very, very strong dose for somebody who's pretty much under 100 pounds. That was pretty much a death row for that little girl. And that's what the smoking gun was for the FBI to actually proceed on this case.
At that, everyone noticed that there's no way she's practicing good medicine. So because automatically she was pretty much just filling out prescriptions. She was not thinking of who the patient was, right? She was not doing that due diligence that doctors do. This thing cracked me up where the FBI agent gave credit to Mr. Dan. She said, he's pretty erratic, but he gets things done. And she said, pretty much she said, give credit when it's due.
So in reality, Mr. Dan, he becomes like a big power to not just his community, to not just his pharmacy, but to the whole country, because he pretty much started this fight against the drug. And Dr. Claggett is not the only one, and that's where it comes in. Whereas the scary part is the Dr. Claggett is just one of many. And the problem is not in her, but pretty much in the Purdue Pharma. That's the main problem at this point.
Oh my guys, do you guys see this coming? I did not. at the end of the episode, who shows up?
Dr. Claggett. Yeah.
Yes,
that was the crazy part. Yeah.
But the crazy part is she did not believe that she did anything wrong. She was, even after all of the years, she actually got in an accident and she got prescribed Oxycontin, and she said that it helped her. So she did not really, I don't know. I don't think she really realized how much harm she did.
I was gonna say, she was also she didn't really get a lot of she didn't get the justice that the people in the communities that she affected felt like she should have gotten. She didn't get like jail time. She just got her license taken away, and she didn't really have to admit any wrongdoing. So probably in her mind, it's like, well, what did I do? And then on top of that, she was incapacitated for a lot of that time period when she was doing that. And then the accident had her even more incapacitated, because that was like really shortly after. I think that was like right before they went to trial when she was in that accident, which is interesting. She got a hangman's fracture. That's kind of what they used to do way back when people had committed crimes, unspeakable crimes. They would, that was the death penalty at the time. So I thought that was interesting how that was like she got that happen to her.
That was the karma coming for her.
Right. Right.
If she didn't get the jail time, but she got damaged pretty bad. I believe it was a really bad accident where
I didn't even know that was possible in a car. It was something else when you see it, right? Because you can see it when she talks. What's it called? Like she has trouble, right? A little bit of communicating a little bit. So you see that she's living with this, what's it called, side effects?
Yeah, she definitely paid for her crimes, for sure.
And then we see, right, because she talks about everything she went through to become a physician, which is understandable. We all know it's several years in school, and she was a mother too, so it was definitely hard work to get her license and be able to achieve being a mother and also a doctor. But then we cut back to Valentine's Day, February 14th of 2002. We see the DEA, SWAT, FBI bust into her office, and pretty much they don't even call it a clinic. They call it an operation because of everything they found inside.
Yeah, so it was stacks of money, and there was prescription, just empty prescriptions with her signature on the bottom, just waiting for the date and the name to be filled in. So definitely they could have a lot of proof that that is not a legitimate clinic. That is just business of getting people addicted to these drugs, pretty much.
When they asked her, did any of your patients die? She can't even answer that. She
had to think about it.
She was blinded by all the money and power that she had. She lost her moral compass. She lost the track. She wasn't even accepting that she was doing harm.
And then it cuts back into, like Olga said, she's not the only doctor, right? There's other doctors doing it, and you see footage of other doctors pretty much doing the same thing, where you see what you were able to see in Dr. Cleggett's, where there was like a line of people. There was lines of people in the other footage in different cities, different clinics.
Yeah, so from here, Mr. Dan goes against the Purdue Pharma. That becomes his mission now. And that's a bigger enemy to go against because it's a whole operation, it's a whole production of these drugs, and millions of people selling it across the country. So now he becomes determined to stop them.
Yeah, you're right. It was pretty much, he was taking on a huge corporation, bunch of money, bunch of lawyers. It was going to be extra hard for him. And then you see, like, one of the problems is that to register a pain clinic, how much do you have to pay for the registration?
I believe it was like not a big amount, and everybody started opening up their little prescription pain clinics, but pretty much that was just side hustle to sell Oxycontin. that's when they noticed that these appear everywhere around the country.
To be honest, $100 for a pain clinic, that's nothing. I mean, so
Higher ROI.
yes. The return on investment you get back. All right. So then the community faces another tragedy, right? And it's in August 29th, 2005. We see how Hurricane Katrina pretty much not obliterates, but damages the community. And even bigger, I mean, more than just San Bernard Parish, it's Louisiana, right? The whole state. So you notice how people start falling more into Oxycontin and using. So, Purdue Pharma goes to see, not to see, but they get called in to respond in a way to what they've been doing. And for their, I wouldn't say illegal marketing tactics, but it was kind of like shady marketing tactics. And they pay $134 million in fines, but they never check responsibility for what they did. And here they go back into why, because of this, they created the prescription monitoring program, right? So we touch back on how they didn't have it at the beginning and how they have it now. The reason why it was created, it was to protect patients and prosecute doctors that run pill mills and to stop doctor shopping. Do you guys remember what doctor shopping it was?
Yeah, so it's pretty much where you can, go find any doctor you want to prescribe you anything. But I just wanted to say that Mr. Dan, he is such a pretty much a random person. He is a pharmacist, but he becomes such a great power in pretty much the whole country to stop the drugs. So, like you said, the Purdue Pharma goes into the court, they pay a lot of money, they go bankrupt. So now, the addicts are out of their drugs. So the Oxycontin becomes not so available anymore. They bring in the drug monitoring system. So now they try to find other drugs. So now we go from Oxycontin addiction into a heroin strike, where people are switching to just a stronger drug and probably worse drug. So yeah, now we see how much harm really Purdue Pharma did. And they went bankrupt, all for what? For money. Now they even lost that. So that's just a very low point at this time.
Again, like you see, like the ones that saw this happening, right? Because people couldn't find their fix, which was Oxycontin, was the drug cartels, right? So they were able to see that business opportunity, because pretty much it's the same fix, just at a cheaper price, but the price you pay is more than money. So you end up paying a higher price than that. And then it shows that there was another industry that did the same marketing tactics of using doctors before Purdue Pharma. You guys remember what that was?
Yeah, it was the cigarettes, the cigarette production, the nicotine, and they also refused in court that nicotine wasn't addictive. They all was straight up faces. They said no, we don't believe that, even though we all know how addictive it is.
I don't know if you guys ever seen, this is another show, right? But it's oh my gosh, I'm blinking on it, but it's back then, even it would prevent pregnant women were smoking, and then there was like posters like, it's okay. Like, go ahead,
Yeah, and they
and
smoked
smoke.
everywhere up until I believe 90s. They was able to smoke anywhere.
So this ends, I would say they're really, Mr. Dan did his best, and he is a great person. Shout out to you, Mr. Dan. We're very proud of you, and
Yes.
we wish you the best.
He is really an example of how somebody, like a simple person, can move the mountains pretty much. And in this whole story, it's very sad, and everybody failed a little bit in this story. The pharma, the doctors, the FDA, the government, everybody has a little bit of blood on their hands in this story, because they ruined communities, they ruined people's lives, and they ruined, not just that Louisiana area, but it's all around the country. So, we just have to be careful, and we just have to, in the end of the day, we just have to be good people. We just have to, it's not all about money. It's all about what you bring in, because the people who thought they were making so much money at the point at that time, they paid later. They paid that money back, and they paid was very hard consequences for their lives. So in the end of the day, it didn't matter to them. So be real and be, a good person at heart. That's the point.
100%. So, guys, this was our take on The Pharmacist on Netflix. And don't forget to demonstrate your love by sharing this podcast with your friends and family, or giving us a review on Spotify and iTunes. Until next time. Bye, y'all.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.